It is a case that changed a community forever and haunted investigators. An innocent girl taken from her bus stop, eventually left to die in the cold. For nearly 3 decades, the question remained, who killed Angie Housman? Tonight, a News 4 exclusive, the 2 men who have made it their life's work to find that answer. Did you ever think that you wouldn't find the killer?
I got discouraged several times, but I always said we're going to find out who did this.
From the day 9-year-old Angie Housman disappeared from her St. Anne bus stop in 1993, Lieutenant Ed Copeland and Lieutenant Colonel John Lankford have been heavily involved in the case.
When she was taken, I was in patrol and remember very, very clearly what our department looked like with the major case being called.
I was the first officer on the scene and took the initial report of her body being found.
9 days after she was abducted and then sexually assaulted, a deer hunter found Angie in the August A. Bush Wildlife Area in St. Charles County, tied to a tree, left to die.
Most of her body was covered with ice and snow.
Her cause of death, hypothermia. The major case squad worked for more than a year to find her killer, but disbanded in 1994 with no answers. That gave way to a 26-year mission for Copeland and Lankford.
I don't think a week went by that I didn't go check some fact out in the case.
There were so many leads to this and so many people determined to solve it that you couldn't say that that lead is not a good lead to look at. So it would be to the point where, if we had 15 leads called in that week, we were going to have 15 different investigations going in there.
The determination was there, but the answers to the gruesome crime were not.
You never got the case out of your mind. Thinking about Angie, thinking about her family. We kept in touch with her family.
In 2017, 24 years after Angie's rape and murder, they were convinced they finally found the killer. But they exhausted that lead. It was another dead end. Then, 2 years later,
today is a day I think that many of us have been waiting for.
A shocking announcement from the St. Charles County prosecutor.
We are pleased to announce that we have a suspect and we have formally charged an individual with the murder, abduction, and sexual assault of Angie Housman.
New technology allowed for DNA testing of a piece of Angie's underwear from the crime scene. The match led officers to Earl Webster Cox.
I screamed out. It was unbelievable. I waited on that for so long. So I called John and I told John, I asked him, what are you doing? And he said, I'm headed into the office, or I'm headed home. I don't know which way he was going. I said, dude, you're not gonna believe this. We got a hit on Housman. It's a good hit. It's who we're looking for. Start crying or whatever, but
I did pull over and started crying. And couldn't get my breath crying.
But getting the DNA match and subsequent charges was just the beginning. They had to build their case against a man who was already serving federal prison time for child pornography. More than 45,000 images and videos of child porn were found on his computer in 2003.
Myself and Lieutenant Lankford and an investigator with the St. Charles County Prosecutor's Office traveled to Butner Correctional Facility in North Carolina and talked to him. We went there to try to get a confession from him, but he chose not to talk to us about the case.
How would you describe that conversation?
Just matter-of-factly. He had no emotion.
We spent almost a year doing the homework on him, a lot of traveling. Obviously, a monster like this, we found other victims, which created other investigations.
After a year of building the case, Earl Cox pled guilty to first-degree murder and child molestation. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. During the investigation, authorities were able to link Cox to another sexual assault of a 7-year-old girl in 1988 and 1989 that happened at Cox's St. Anne home and in Overland before Housman's murder. Lankford remembers his initial call to that now adult victim.
I mentioned Earl Cox's name, and I just remember her crying or getting upset and saying, "I never thought I'd hear that name again."
And in March of this year, Cox entered an Alford plea, admitting prosecutors had enough evidence to win a conviction against him in another heinous crime. Finally, a finale for a case that's troubled people for more than a quarter of a century.
I think when the St. Louis County case just ended March 5th, when that Alford plea came in, it was really finally the closure for me.
So many years working on that case and talking to both of those detectives. They developed a friendship through all of those years, and they made a promise to each other that they were going to retire after this case was solved. So both of them will be retiring this year.
Well, and you have to think, too, in a case like this, it's been ongoing for now the better part of 3 decades. It takes a lot of hands and a lot of minds to not only preserve the case, but to close it.
So many people a part of this Angie Housman case, and to find the killer. And we were talking about investigators from multiple different departments, prosecutors from St. Charles County and St. Louis County for both of those cases. So many people had their hands in this of getting where we are today with that.
A lot of relief, definitely, for everybody involved, including the families, most importantly.